Sarkar. Well, let's shift focus to the most important news that we are gathering at this time. Now, the United States has officially issued a public notice imposing additional 25% tariffs on imports from India, with the new duties set to take effect from August 27th, that is tomorrow. Now, the tariffs will apply to a broad range of Indian products listed in the annex to the notice. The tariffs will apply to any goods that arrive for use or are taken out of warehouses after the deadline. And to discuss this further and what's the impact going to be on the markets following this development, I'm now joined by Sunil Subramaniam. Hi, Sunil sir. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. Before we get started with what's going to be the market impact, what are your first thoughts? There was some anticipation that this deadline may be extended, or at least a new, date would be out when the US and India talks are going to take place. But so far, there's no update on that front as well. So what are your first thoughts now that Trump has issued that official notification that these tariffs come into play from tomorrow?
Yes, I think that was anticipated. I think the only hope that India had in terms of these tariffs was that the Russia-Ukraine peace deal that Mr. Trump brokered, right? If that had seen a successful or a hint towards a positivity, the second 25%, which was a political tariff, could have gone away. But the first 25% is a basic thing, and the trade delegation, as we all know, cancelled their visit to India. So I think this was more or less anticipated in terms of the country. And even the statements from both sides are indicating about strengthening their stance. So I don't think this was a very big surprise that there was no hint that he was going to cancel that 50% order. So this clarification and everything is just strengthening that purpose. In fact, Mr. Trump, even against China, has used very strong words yesterday. So clearly he is standing his ground on the tariff front, and we're not going to see any light very soon in terms of a resolution, especially for both India and America.
Absolutely. And sir, now what about the markets? How do you expect the markets to react? Do you believe that the downturn that we have been seeing, not the downturn exactly, but we have fallen below that 5,000 mark, and we've been range bound, though, many experts have suggested that there's going to be some festive cheer. But do you think now the tariff news, the official announcement that has come, that is going to weigh heavy on the market, and we could still be far away from that 25,000 mark?
Well, not really. I think that the news was more or less discounted in the market. I don't think this is a surprise. It was expected to happen. There was a few people who had a faint hope that some last minute, rabbit out of the hat would be pulled out. But I don't think there was any ground level signals from either our side on the trade ministry side or from the US. So I think the market will take this in its stride. What it does, however, is that FIIs were probably more keen to look at whether India and America are working towards a resolution. And probably, as you know, even after the GST announcement and the S&P upgrade last week, FIIs were more or less sellers. I think only in 2 days out of the 5 days did they buy, and the rest they were sellers. So FII mood is likely to continue to be subdued towards India, especially given the fact that our valuations continue to be high, and the markets, whatever the rally in certain specific sectors, has not made them any cheaper. So I think the situation will be a kind of status quo. FII flows will remain away, and domestic will be looking at sectors that can benefit, and there will be some sector rotation. So markets will be in a consolidating phase, but I don't see a strong negative reaction to the fact that he has signed the order yesterday.
Okay, so a strong negative reaction may not come in the markets. That's the word coming in. But sir, talking sectors now, most of these capital goods companies, they had in their guidance that they are cautiously optimistic, especially because of the uncertainty around tariffs. But now going forward, what kind of impact do you expect these companies to face, and how will we see their earnings shape up in the quarters to come?
The quarters to come, the earnings may not be very great because private capex has not taken off. But I get confidence from the fact that the CEO of L&T has said in multiple interviews that he's seeing the green shoots in terms of private sector orders coming into them for execution. That's one. Second is, we all know that the GST impact, there may be a delay because the dates of the GST reduction are yet to be finalized. So people may postpone their purchases on the consumption side for about 15 days to a month. But once the festival season comes in and the sales happen, the capacity utilization in the country will go up. And I expect this to give a boost to capacity utilization utilization going up beyond the 78, 79 to 80% even. So when that happens, private sector capex will join the party. And I think if you have a slightly medium-term outlook in terms of a year and a half, capital goods, in fact, is a very good sector to invest in because it is not related to the tariffs. The private sector capital goods are related to domestic consumption and domestic capacity going up so that they build up more capacity to cater to that demand. So to some extent, it's reasonably insulated from the tariff scenario. And I would actually say that it's a good time to go and invest in the broader capital goods sector, which is cement, industrials, building materials, steel, and EPC contractors and the like.
Right. So it's a good time to actually invest for a slightly medium to long-term perspective when it comes to the broader capital goods sector. That's the word coming in. But so what about sectors like auto and pharma? How do you think one must play these now?
I think auto I think had a good run last week because obviously auto is going to be the key consumption number that the Diwali season is going to affect because buying cars or upgrading their cars is one of the key consumer discretionary items that people focus on. So a lot of light on the auto sector, but in the auto sector, it's a very wide range of products there. So I think that with a good monsoon flowing through, I think the two-wheeler segment should see good numbers coming up even in the festival season. I see cars also at the entry level. You see a positive scenario because I think the cars above a certain level are probably going to be at the 28, which is going down to 18, so 10% relief there. So yes, that. But auto components, which are an export-oriented item largely, might see the impact of tariffs. Tractors, on the other hand, will benefit from the good monsoon. And finally, commercial vehicles also I see as a good time to pick up because with the capex cycle as it picks up, it's a commercial vehicle which will be needed to transport all the cement and steel and other goods. So I would say that auto is a kind of a very diversified pack and there are specific sub-segments that you need to look at carefully in terms of your investing decision, especially considering the fact that there has been a decent rally last week. On the case of pharma, I think the pharma number earnings have been very good. And I think overall our situation in pharma is a decent situation. But Mr. Trump's threatened tariffs going all the way up to 250% on pharma still remains like a Damocles sword hanging there. He's not acted on it, but he may act in the future. If he doesn't do anything about pharma, the pharma is a good space to invest in, especially if you consider that domestic pharma is in a good space like hospitals and diagnostics and all. I think they're in a good space. So I would say that in pharma, you can stay invested. And wait and see if Mr. Trump actually follows through on his threat to hike the tariffs there, which right now is not something that he's doing with any urgency.
Right. And so just two more points here I wanted to highlight. We were just talking about how Trump has actually asked the companies, pharma companies in the US to bring down prices. And now, essentially once imports become expensive, like when tariffs are imposed, it was the US consumer which was going to face a higher price. But he's actually asked for prices to, be lowered when it comes to drug prices. So how do you expect this whole picture to shape up then? And how will Indian companies stand to, benefit or lose in any way from this move?
So I think that two things. That one is that the reason he's written this letter is because the cost of subsidized pharma, the Obamacare, if you remember, is picked up by the US government. And that's why for him that's important because they offer those medicines free to their public. So to that extent, the cost is borne by the government, not by the consumer. That's why he's written a letter to the big pharma companies saying reduce your prices. Now, I think that pharma companies will follow through and reduce prices because they're all sitting on very fat profits. As you know, the pharma products, once they get a patent, right, they get the super profit because they have spent years on research and development. So only when it goes from there to the generics part, right, does the actual costs come down or the prices come down. So to the extent that they all are sitting on huge profits, I'm sure the pharma companies, big pharma companies would do a reduction to favor Mr. Trump to get on his right side. But this would actually increase their outsourcing to India on the CDMO because the contract drug manufacturing when it's made in India is cheaper. So to that extent, it might be a perverse way, but because the prices are going to be reduced, they might actually increase outsourcing at the back end to countries like India, and China, which have a much lower labor cost. So we have to wait and see how that plays out. The second aspect is that on the generic side, anyway, the Indian companies which are directly exporting there, they are off-patent drugs. So these are not very expensive drugs. So I don't think Mr. Trump's focus is so much on the generics, which are more like a bulk purchase and which have come off the patent and already at kind of market-related prices. So I think that's the way it will happen. It might actually help the CDMO sector in India.
All right, so it might actually help the CDMO sector in India because once US companies are expected to lower their drug prices, they may be out